I bet you forgot that one of Joe Rogan's henchmen does brownface and says a bunch of N-words in this movie. It's day 120 of 365. Today's movie, The Hangover 2. Looking to join your own Wolfpack? Ticket Stub Movie Club has these daily movies as well as deeper dives in our monthly movies, a private Discord, and so much more. Discover that with the link in my profile. Directed by Todd Phillips and starring Zach Galifianakis, Ed Helms, and Bradley Cooper, The Wolfpack is back, baby. We're talking about The Hangover Part II. I've already covered this film on day 58 of this series. You can go back and check out that full review. But the TLDR is, I think that it's a breakdown of the male mind, the id, ego, and superego represented in our three main characters. You probably wouldn't guess that that theory actually holds up in the second movie here and expands on it. I don't know how much I enjoyed the movie, but it's kind of cool that you can tell Todd Phillips was trying to grow these characters a little bit. They're not exactly the same as they were in the previous movie. He invented his formula with that first movie and then stuck to it with this one while also sprinkling in some very edgy comedy and very taboo stuff. In 2011, I was definitely coming back for this one. The first movie was very impactful on me as a late teenager, and so of course I was going to show up for this one and the third one. Walking out of the theater, I remember being thoroughly entertained, but I actually never revisited after that watch, so 2025 was the first time I had seen it since 2011. One thing I do remember from that 2011 watch was being a little annoyed at Zach Galifianakis' character Alan. I was hoping that he had grown more since the last movie, and the fact that he had kind of regressed was a little annoying to me as a fan. In 2025, the one-upsmanship is on full display here. Phillips was really trying to top himself on that first one and push the envelope to a point that I'm just not comfortable with. Obviously, this was the height of edgy comedy. In 2011, YouTubers were really pushing the envelope, so I can see how a filmmaker felt the need to stand out in that kind of world. I just do not appreciate the places that he pushed to. It's unfortunate for a plethora of reasons, but outside of the transphobia and racism and other things, I just didn't really dig this one this time, but that doesn't mean we can't still jump into the psychology of what's happening with these characters. So let's jump into a further psychoanalysis of the Wolfpack and talk about three things that I noticed in The Hangover Part II. The first thing worth noting is about taboo and masculinity. We're going to call this section, The Boys Get Racist. Now, of course, there was a light smattering of racism in the first movie. These movies started out edgy, so that's why they continued to push even more so. But I think it's worth pointing out in this movie that if we're doing an evolution of the ego, in the first film, they are kids becoming men. Here, the id, ego, and superego have become men and are now trying to learn how to communicate with each other. And they don't know how to do that. So instead, they rely on racism. Bradley Cooper opens the movie almost with one of the most racist lines I've ever heard him have in a movie for a character that's supposed to be seen as likable. He trashes on Ed Helms' soon-to-be wife in front of her young teenage brother. This is an unfortunately beautiful display of toxic masculinity. He's establishing his pecking order within the group by saying, hey, I'm the leader, so much so that I can fuck with your idea of your own wife and sister right to your face because I'm the tall, hot one. The comment is overtly racist to establish that he doesn't give a fuck. This then allows the rest of the group to feel okay saying and doing similar things. Alan does this by stumbling into it. He's the talking mouthpiece, and he reads a text later on and drops the N-word and then pushes it even further. That's right, Galifianakis has a hard R in this movie. It is hard to watch. This is these young men playing around with taboo. Experimenting with taboo is part of how you recognize yourself. You're exploring your relationship to it, helps you understand who you are. That's not to forgive anything that they're doing here, by the way. This is just a psychoanalysis of why these characters would want to do these things. The appearance of racism in this movie is their exploration of taboo. The second exploration of the mind in this movie is an exploration of sexuality. We're going to call this section, The Boys Start to Play with Their Butts. Queerness and gayness are at the forefront of topic material for toxic men when they get together because exploring that is not a safe realm for them. Because of patriarchy and toxic masculinity, to be gay is to be less than. Like I talked about in the last section, part of infantilizing the men around him, Bradley Cooper's character takes the lead by often making them feel effeminate for the things that they like and want to do. The inciting incident in the IHOP that Galifianakis' character character's not even there for. Alan's not involved in that scene. It lets you see how much of Bradley Cooper's Phil is just deeply afraid of how much he loves the men in his life. It makes him feel homosexual to love these guys. But the real focus of this topic for the movie becomes Ed Helms' Stu as he drunkenly explores his feelings through cheating on his fiancée with a Thailand ladyboy. This is an exhausted trope at this point, but it's their deeply disturbing reactions to this that really tie this into toxic masculinity. The movie does not make pronouns very clear, so I'm going to use she, her pronouns. The woman goes on to explain that he had a very beautiful time and cries during, because in his drunken stupor, he's more attached to how he truly feels and likely has had thoughts about this in the past. The fact that he got to explore it and it was something he could survive was probably very beautiful for his drunken mind, but his reaction to it of almost vomiting and all the guys around him also reaffirming that reaction just goes to show that the cheating wasn't the issue. They're actually very quick to dismiss that. It's the action of penetration that is so difficult for them to wrap their minds around, so much so that they want to psychologically roofie themselves from it. Here in 2025, we understand the gender spectrum, the sexuality spectrum, and how all of this is kind of moot if two consenting adults are doing what they want to do. The cheating's the real issue here, and it's never addressed towards the end of the movie. This is something that we just learn to accept about Stu, and I absolutely abhor that. Like, these movies are awful in general. These are awful characters in general, but this is directly, like, unforgivable, and the movie wants us to be cheering for their marriage by the end of the film. This is dissonance that I just cannot allow, and probably why this one is going to end up being the one that I hate the most of the trilogy. That being said, I can't remember a single thing about the third film except for the fact that Stu gets prosthetic tits while he's drunk, I think the fourth time that they go party, so that's its own sexuality thing to explore at that point. Again, that's the only plot point that I can recall, so maybe I'll hate 3 even more. The third and final point to bring up within this movie is aging and masculinity, and we're going to call this The Boys Are Getting Old. Now, this is likely explored even deeper in the third film, but I think it's worth noting that this movie goes out of its way to say that these guys feel like they're losing opportunities to party. The introduction of a young 16-year-old character into the group, and then his removal from the group, is a way of dangling the age of these characters in front of them. Later on in the movie, we find out that Ken Jeong's character has a happy marriage and a career that he loves. Now, of course, he gets arrested by Paul Giamatti's character, but that's kind of part of the lifestyle of being a criminal, and I believe he shows up in the third movie as well, so we know he gets out of prison eventually. The boys are dealing with the fact that they're aging. They had this experience in the first film that forced them to confront themselves as adults and to finally grow out of their teenage ways because of the large mistakes they made. Now they're finding out that as an adult, you can still make the same mistakes. The growth does not stick forever. It takes repetitive working at it for it to actually last. This is an adult responsibility to choose to say, no, instead I won't act out once I get fucked up. This is also highlighted by the fact that the fourth part of their Wolfpack ends up back at the hotel totally safe the next day because he's grown up. He does not act the way these guys do. He was stuck on the roof in the first one, and now in this one, he's safely back at the hotel. Now, this does stem from one of my favorite parts of the movie, where they realize to check the roof first at the beginning of the movie. That's probably one of the best jokes in the entire thing because it's built on the meta layer of understanding the formula from the first movie. But now the boys are facing down their taboos, their sexuality, and their age. We've come to the end of the movie, which I did not enjoy very much, so I guess follow if you want to check out the third one with me. Because I had just the worst time with this movie, to cleanse the palate, we're going to be talking about a superhero movie again. I know we just talked about Thor, but we've actually got 2 more lined up. The first one being X-Men First Class. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow.